So, I mean, I was very excited that Maytree asked me to speak about community engagement, because this is basically what I have been agonizing over and working on for over 20 years in the work that I've been doing in various different organizations, various issues. And I think that if you don't know anything about the Workers' Action Centre, I really would advise you to come pick up the copy of our annual report, which is on the table here, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about the work we do, but I think, you know, if you get a sense then in terms of the perspective that I'm bringing to this topic and to this really critical issue, then you'll understand in terms of the work we're doing on the Workers' Action Centre, because we really are building a workers' centre that is worker-led, that is a membership-based, non-profit organisation dealing with the issues that face low-wage workers in precarious work, in contract work, who come from immigrant and racialized communities, who are migrant workers. And we're trying to work on building a model that is about supporting that leadership from the ground up to speak out on the issues that affect people in their lives. And it's really difficult work to do, but community engagement is a really essential and critical piece of that work. So when Katerina asked me to come up with five good ideas, well, I thought, well, I've got 5 ideas. I'm not sure if they're good, but you can be the judge of that. I think the first thing for me, though, instead of just launching right into what does community engagement look like, what are some things to think about, is actually to take a bit of a step back. Because I think we need to talk about why we're interested. Why are we interested, or your organization is interested in community engagement? And I think it's really important to know why, because, you know, if we don't think about why we're trying to get people involved, then we're missing a whole piece of this whole conversation. And I think it's really difficult when all around us we're hearing all these buzzwords, right? Resident engagement, community engagement, active engagement, leadership building, capacity building, community organizing. And you know, we kind of rush into that. But I don't think sometimes we take a step back and say, but really why? Why are we doing this? And I want the comments that I am saying today I want you to know that it's not coming from a judgmental perspective. There's no judgment here. But I want us to be reflective in terms of why we're doing this. And this comes from working in many different organizations, working for a trade union, working for an international organization and an international network, working in many grassroots coalitions and networks, you know, immigrant groups, where we really have thought enthusiastically about the desire and, you know, wouldn't it be great if we had more of a connection from those folks from a particular immigrant community? Wouldn't it be great if we had more people coming out to our events, our AGM, our community planning process, our community meetings on different issues? Wouldn't it be great if we had people willing to speak to the media, tell them their story, that we had more volunteers? I mean, those are the kinds of day-to-day things that we're always engaging in, right? But I think, you know, we do these events, people come, people go. We organize the next AGM or the next event, people come and they go. And the attendance can get a little smaller. And then we're all thinking about, how do we entice people to get out to an event? You know, let's get a great, you know, great food. Let's have activities for the children. Let's, you know, try and find someone that people will relate to so that they'll come out. But again, many times we're not clear on why we're wanting to engage with the communities we're working on. And so my first point is, let's be clear on why we're opening the doors in the first place, right? When we're thinking about this, and how open is your door going to be, right? Is it going to be a little crack? I'm going to use this metaphor, so forgive me. So that people can get better access to the services that you deliver. Is it a slightly bigger crack so that community members can shape the services that you offer? Are you actually wanting community members and people from your neighborhoods to actually get involved in the decision making in how your organization works? Can they become a member? Can they get involved on your board? Can they become a staff person? Is the extent of the community engagement only around participating in just your organization? Or are you open to facilitating people's access to other networks, other organizations, other resources, other campaigns? Are you facilitating the ability of community members to get in other doors, not just in your own door, right? And are you open to being challenged in the way you do your work? And I think ultimately, this is about supporting our communities to get involved in a really important struggle that's happening right now around the issues that affect people's lives, right? Whether it's poverty, racism, discrimination, housing, health. This is right now, we're in a real struggle for getting a decent life with dignity and respect for not only ourselves, but for the people we work with. And that's the power of community engagement. But it has to be grounded in the aspirations of the people in the communities that we work in. Not done for them, but done with them, collaboratively, grounded in those aspirations. And I think we also have to be clear on who are we opening the doors for? Is it for everyone? Or is it just for the folks that understand your way of operating? That can speak the same language, that can easily blend into the culture of your organization, not rock the boat, right? So we need to think about how we guard the doors. And again, this is to be reflective, right, of all the ways, funding, structures, history, baggage of our organizations. We could be working for a very young organization. Many times we're working for an organization that has many years of operating, so there's a lot of baggage, right? And so I think, this is really hard stuff to sort of grapple with. And many of us struggle with this on a daily basis. How to do this with integrity, how to share power, how to have democratic and transparent processes of engagement. But it is so important to be honest and reflective on why and what extent are we willing to go down this path? Are we willing to open that door to the communities we work with? Because if not, I think that we are sending a wrong message to the communities that we're wanting to connect with. Because then words become meaningless. People become very cynical. They become less interested. They go, what's the point, right? They become bitter. And they lose their ability to feel that they can connect with the organizations in their community in a meaningful way. And so I think that, with this first idea, I think it's really important to not only have this conversation with just a couple of people, but to embody this thinking and this perspective in all aspects of the culture of your organization. It really is a cultural shift. It's not just one person that can take this mantle and go forth. It really does, imbue what you're all about. And that's why it's hard stuff, right? And, it means looking at your mission, your vision, your structure, your board, your staff, your volunteers, your servicing, trainings, volunteers, your outreach, and really trying to look at that stuff. And many of us can't work in those organizations that are willing to take those risks and to be bold in that conversation. And if not, then we need to find grassroots initiatives that are doing that work and to get involved, because those initiatives that are really wanting to build on the aspirations of community and be grounded in that work is really critical. Hard stuff, but really critical work to be done if we want to be transformative in our community engagement approach. Okay, number 2, changing our culture. So this is kind of, getting off on, you've had this whole conversation. Well, one little piece could be, and this could be a bit sensitive with some people, and I understand that it's sensitive because it's language that we're always using, right? But let's start with not treating community members as clients. Let's change the way we talk about who comes in the door and what they represent. Because many times when we see people when they walk in the door of our organizations and when someone talks to them on the phone, that first point of contact as nonprofit sector in particular, which is what I have come from, is we are assuming a real service delivery model, right? We are connecting with the people we want to engage with as a service deliverer, and we see them as clients. We need to see them as community members, as participants, as leaders, as people who can shape our organizations and who are equal to us and not who we do things for. And, you know, I understand that the service delivery stuff, that service delivery pressure and structure and funding that gets imposed on our organizations, you know, that is imposed by the government in many different levels that we have connections with, whether it's federal, provincial, municipal, has a huge impact on our organizations. And it's really shaped the culture of our organizations to be delivering services. And I think if we are seeing people as numbers, as they come in the door to fill our quotas, to fill in our stat sheets, fill in our programs, people will then treat you as a service deliverer and as a government service deliverer that you have become. And, you know, many people that, you know, I've talked to, and I'm sure you've had the same conversations, talk about being treated as a number, as an irritant, as another needy person coming in the door. And so I want you to think about, in the places where you work, think about the space that people enter when they come in. Is it open? Is it welcoming? Is it friendly? Are there a number of barriers before someone can even talk to a real person and relate to your organization? And how are people treated if they don't fit into your organization's mandate? Is there an immediate rejection and an out referral? Or how is that process handled? How do you deal with people who don't fit what you're supposed to do? Are they treated as an irritant? Are they treated as another question, another call, another person, another drop-in? By the time a lot of people come in our doors, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're suspicious, they're ready to be rejected again. And this doesn't make people feel good, right? I mean, this is like, you know, basic stuff. Like, let's think about how we feel when we're trying to get a hold of someone in some government department and you're just being passed around, right? Because you don't fit in anywhere. So why would people really want to get involved if this is the sort of the culture that people are going into? Why would they feel confident in your community engagement approach? Why would they be willing to take that next step to work with you on what issue you're coming to them with? And I would say that that's a problem too, right? Because the issues you need to be going to people with should, again, be grounded. And there should be already a process before that in terms of a resonance to what you're wanting to work with people on. So if they're still being expected to be treated as a client, it only allows for a specific interaction. And it I think, provides a space, unfortunately, for someone to feel that they have to be grateful for that service that you've given to them. Not entitled, but grateful. So we need to talk about how do we make people feel welcomed, valued, respected? How are we willing to build an alternative culture in our organization and in the work we do? And how are we willing to be reflective and understand how our funding shapes how we do the work? Because that's one of the first steps, right? I know we get government funding too, but it's important to deconstruct how that shapes us and then take it apart in terms of seeing what you can move around, what you can challenge, how you can build things in. So the question is, are we going to accept this or change the way we do things? And again, I understand there's pressure that we're all under, but there are simple things that we can do. We can move from individualizing individual problems to more of a collective approach. So let me give you an example. So we operate a hotline where workers call on their workplace problems. Now, many workers expect that we're going to give them the answer on the phone and then they're going to hang up and it's all, goodbye, see you later, because they're always expecting a service. Now, for us, we're not operating the hotline because we want to operate a service. Absolutely, we think it's critical to operate a service to welcome questions, especially from people who have very little power in the workplace. But the other point of the hotline is to connect with workers who are struggling with low wages, who have nowhere else to go, and who we believe are leaders in this fight to change the kinds of wages and working conditions that people are dealing with right there. So someone phones us, and we, do a basic kind of intake on the phone. But then what we do is we invite them to an information session. So we don't give them all the answers on the phone. Depending, again, on the barriers that they have, obviously if they're phoning from Kingston, we can't really do that. But if they're phoning, most people, if they've owed $3,000 in wages, or they've been discriminated against, or they need support, they're going to come to an information session, right? And so what we do is we bring a whole bunch of people together that don't know each other, and we do this in North York, we do it in Scarborough, we do it in downtown. And what we do is we run these information sessions every other week in an evening. And what we do is we start a process of collectivizing those individual problems. So we'll have a round table just like this of people. Someone may have not been paid their wages. Someone may have been fired unfairly. Someone may not have been paid public holiday pay. And what we do is we do an information session on employment standards, but where we start to make the links with why are people in this situation in the first place? Why is it that somebody can go to work and not get paid? Why is it that our employment standards are not enforced so that it's easy for someone to get fired unfairly or not get paid public holiday pay or be discriminated against? We start to make the broader connections from the individual. And so people start to understand that, oh my God, this is not just me. This is other people too. This is over 25,000 people that make complaints to the Ministry of Labour in the year. This is hundreds of people that phone the Workers' Action Centre. Oh, there's some real systemic issues here. Why is it that there's only over 30 inspectors for the whole of the province to do employment standards enforcement? Wow, that really sucks. Okay, what are we going to do about this? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? That's the kind of conversation. So you can see how you move it from, I need my wages, I want to do something about this, to, oh my God, this is happening to all of us in this room. A lot of our rights aren't protected. And there's some systemic barriers here. There's some systemic issues. And then we talk about what's the pathway to doing something about it. How to become a member of the centre, how to get the support on filing a Ministry of Labour claim, challenging their employer, getting connected to resources that they might need, but how to do something about it. Now, absolutely, there are some people that come and go and say, you know what, I'm trying not to swear, I don't really care. Marco said he would bleep me if I did this. I don't really care. I've just got, I'm working 80 hours a week. I got to pay the bills. Just, help me. And so you'll always have people like that. But you'll also get people walking in your door that are inspiring leaders, that are wanting to go out there and talk about the fact that they haven't been paid, willing to take a stand, to take a risk and speak out and become the most inspirational people that I've come across. And so that is what you are opening your doors to allowing those folks to become leaders in your organization and to facilitate their ability to move forward in this struggle, whatever struggle you're in or whatever issue you're in. That is what this is about. And so I think, moving it to a collective process, building in education, building in an understanding of how that individual issue connects to the broader context. We need to support our staff in this perspective. There's not a lot of training on this. It's not enough to tell your staff, if you work in organizations, that this is the approach, please go forth and do this. We need to do training on what this means so that people understand how you do this in your daily practice, how you don't, because you're overloaded, that you don't just kind of dismiss people. And again, it's not coming from a position of judgment. It's coming from a position of, we're overloaded, we have tons of work to do, we don't have enough resources. But if you have a vision that you're trying to accomplish, which is around community engagement, then those issues are there, but that's not what runs you, right? That's not what drives your organization. We need to talk to community members, get feedback, ask what needs to be changed in the culture of our organization. What do you feel when you walk in the door? Do you feel invisible? Do you feel like, there's a barrier between the reception desk and these rows of chairs that you feel like you're in, Service Canada, and that, you feel like you should kind of tiptoe around the office and, before you're actually asked to ask your question? Like, what's the culture? What needs to change? And I think we need to be okay about taking risks, making mistakes, trying to change things not working out, and then trying something new, right? And reflecting and having some principles that we're trying to build into the way we work, that you can, after you do a program, you say, okay, what are those principles again? Put them on a wall. Did we involve people in this? Did we build new leaders? Did we bring new people into our organization? Who shared the learning? Is it just the staff, or did the community benefit from this? Those are some of the principles that we have as an organization. So, and this kind of gets to my third point, which is treating people as experts in what they know. And again, this is about the service mentality and the culture in our community organizations where we see ourselves as the experts. And we are here to help people. They are deserving of our help. Instead of it being, lived experience, direct experience that many people come from just living their lives in their communities, dealing with poverty, housing, bad health, countries back home, the kind of struggles that people have been in. Are we... and so I would say, are we all experts in that lived experience? Absolutely not. Are we experts in knowing how the networks, communication, and how communities operate in our communities? Some of us may be, but the folks who walk in your doors certainly are. They are the experts, right? And I find that this doesn't get recognized as much as it should be, and we get so hung up in providing a service that this becomes a priority instead of injecting the space in our programs to build community relationships and to understand where people might be coming from. And so I would say that my third idea is really about seeing community members as the experts in what they know. Their experience, their knowledge, their skills that they bring to the table. And so in those information sessions that I was talking about, we start a conversation around, well, what did you do in that situation when your rights got violated? What are some of the strategies? Because people come to our center and most of them are mini organizers because, frankly, they have been going to their employer. Let's say they've not been paid their wages. They've been going every day. They've been calling. They've been doing all kinds of things to get their wages. And once that has all run out, then they try and seek support. That's normally the case. And so, how do you learn from the strategies that people have used themselves in dealing with unfair workplace issues? How do you deal with them bringing to the table to say, I've got all these networks of people in this community that are dealing with the same issues. We need to work on that. So it'll be like, okay, how do we work on that, right? How do you open up the space for that dialogue? in terms of how people can get connected to shaping services, affecting policy and campaigns, our message, our communication, all of those pieces. So a few simple things. Build in an extra hour on building in a conversation on making those links. You may have funding to do a specific program. How do you build in an hour or half an hour on making sure you're connecting with people on how they connect with your organization? Open the door to community initiatives. Let's not be gatekeepers here. Community engagement is about being open to ideas coming from many different people and facilitating that. Providing space, again, on your staff, on your volunteers to learn, get trained, get engaged in community work. Help support community members to be at the table of community initiatives. It shouldn't just be staff people of your organization. How are you facilitating community members to be at the table of networks, coalitions, other project initiatives that are happening out of your organization? They have a lot of experience to bring, and that's about opening the door to exposing people on different ideas, on different ways of what's going on. Open the door to policy, to research, and how are you connecting the issues that community members are bringing to you on, poverty, housing, maybe you're running a food bank. How do you connect those to the various struggles that are happening? I really do fundamentally believe we have a responsibility to do this in the work that we do. So, fourth idea. Wow, okay. Fourth idea, I'm going to start going really fast now. Transparent pathways of involvement. Again, this is really just building on what I've said. Are community members clear in how they get involved in your organization? Or is it confusing? Is it transparent? Do people just miss out getting involved in your organization because the one staff person that's really keen? It could possibly be you while you're here at this at this event. There could be someone walking into your organization right now, but because you're passionate around community engagement, they've missed an opportunity to get involved in your organization because that's what you do, right? So, is it just you, or is it imbued in all of the staff or in all the people that work in your organization, in your volunteers? Do people get involved only when you want it to happen or when your organization wants it to happen? So you choose when and how people get involved. Who is determining who gets involved? Is it in the community members' hands and their decision, or is it in yours and your organization? And is that pathway only for certain types of involvement? Again, let's just be clear here in terms of what we're talking about. And so obviously some of the basic principles of also allowing people to get engaged in a very transparent way is then just really enabling that support. Food, TTC tokens, childcare, understanding when you're programming, where it takes place, when it takes place. If it's live-in caregivers, well, the only day they can meet is maybe Sunday mornings or on Saturday afternoons. That's just the way it is. And that's just what you have to do if that's what you're wanting to do, right? So just being really clear on that. Okay, fifth idea is the infrastructure of training and support. I think this is really quite critical because if you've gone through all of this conversations around why you're doing it, and then you haven't built the infrastructure and you haven't built the training and the support to allow people to implement it, whether it's just having this conversation at your organization, then, it's going to get a little lost. So you really need the infrastructure, especially if we're talking about, sharing leadership, building a diverse leadership, building the kind of community engagement that I'm talking about. How are we supporting that process to happen with an infrastructure? So, for instance, I talked about this at the Daily Bread Food Bank conference a year or two ago, where they were looking at this. So, why not, if let's just use the food bank for an example, you could facilitate the involvement of people in the food bank of a leaders committee or an action committee. This could get ongoing support to build people's confidence to share their story, make the connections to policy issues, broader poverty systemic issues, and then support their active involvement in the fight against poverty. Get them connected to local organizing efforts if the food bank is not doing that. But there's many different anti-poverty fights in the city. How do you then facilitate that? Facilitate their ability to become staff people, to run the food bank themselves, change the food bank, change how it operates, how they treat people, the culture. That just opens the door. So some of the things to think about to support you in doing that. How do you do your education? What kind of approach do you take? You know, there's a whole bunch of work out there on leadership development programs, popular education perspectives in terms of that takes this practice of community engagement, building on the expertise of what people bring to the table, building on that, moving it towards action, and then involvement in your organization. I've given you a tip on that sheet that you got. The Catalyst Center has some great programs and ideas on that. Internships. What's the pathways of involvement? Are you just determined to keep people, again, at a certain level? We need to welcome people into our organizations in many ways. And one of the concrete ways we can do that is about them becoming the staff of our organizations. What are the pathways of learning that you can do that? And one of the critical ones I found is internships, where people from the community can learn how to do the work of an organizer, for instance, without the pressure of being an organizer, where they get to shadow and drink in what it means to run a workshop and do this work on a day-to-day basis without being put in such a difficult situation as then suddenly delivering all of these programs and services and dealing with expectations. How do we support people through internships, paid internships, by the way, paid internships, not unpaid, to learn the work and then to be able to move into pathways of becoming staff and leaders, again, into our organization. Staff training, training at all levels. I'm going to really try and wrap it up now. So, in conclusion, why are we even talking about community engagement, right? Why are we even having this conversation? Well, I think we're wanting to have this conversation because we are all about trying to build the communities that we're working in, where people can get the opportunities, where they can live in a healthy way with dignity and have the ability to not just survive, but to thrive, right? And I hope that one of the things that we have as a common understanding is that we believe that communities have the right to this and that they have the right to this dignity and respect and a decent standard of living. And so I think that when we're in the organizations we're in, we have a responsibility to make change, a responsibility to work with the people that come into our doors and facilitate their involvement in the broader struggle that affects their lives and as a result our lives too, and a responsibility to work for broader social change so that we don't have this systemic inequality and social inequalities that we're dealing with right now in our society. And that is the power of community engagement. And those are my 5 good ideas. There we go.